Streaming live around the world, this is Paper Cuts with Brad and Jay.
We'll just get this out of the way here. Thanks for joining us on Brad's show.
Yeah, thanks for coming to my show. I did not say shenanigans. Okay.
Are you drinking already?
No, I've just got water. Always looking smooth, aren't you?
Yeah, I do it. I try to clean up for the show. Look, one of us has to. Come on.
Tonight's guest, New York Times bestselling author, Daniel Kraus. We are live.
Oh, well, hello there. What a beautiful night for a new episode of Paper Cuts. What's up, everyone? My name is Jay. You know that by now. Over there is Brad.
You're getting the
enough
point
about
down
him.
there. I can never get it there right.
No, my arthritis won't allow me to really do it really well. But that's enough about him. So with us this evening, holy cow, how do we manage this? I mean, someone somewhere must like us for us.
It's all Aaron's fault.
Interview.
It's Aaron's fault. We'll blame Aaron.
We're gonna owe her forever.
Yeah.
Everyone, we have with us this evening a New York Times bestselling author. He's the writer of the hot book everyone's showing pictures of on Twitter. Not even out yet, right? It's like July, I believe.
July.
Everyone, give it up for Daniel Kraus. Daniel, how's it going tonight?
What's going on, Daniel?
Hey, it's going great. I'm happy to be here. This is exactly what I want to be doing right now.
Yeah, thanks so much for stopping by. And that was a little sarcastic, by the way. I'm kidding. Yeah, thanks so much.
Well, it sounds like I'm being sarcastic, but I'm not. For some reason, this just sounds, having a conversation, it sounds right up my alley right now.
Well, in this day and age where you can't do anything face to face anymore, this is the next best thing. So, and plus you get to talk about yourself and your work
right
to millions of people. Well,
millions of people,
tens of people,
tens of people.
Yeah. How's the promoting going for the book? Are you doing traveling for this promoting? Are you out doing appearances and stuff?
I still don't have a whole lot of. I'm still doing a ton of traveling. I've got starting sort of. I think maybe in April or May, I'm starting to do in-person events. I mean,
okay.
We'll see if they pan out. But I am starting to do a few trips, and I haven't really since COVID started. Everything's been up.
Right. So where are they taking you? Where
well,
Midwest
I think the first going is StokerCon. So that's
okay.
Sort of the Horror Writers
right.
Association convention in Denver in May. So and I think I was supposed to go to the last two and kept getting kind of booted. But that's the first event. And then I've got a few after that, but still not that many on the schedule.
Wait, you were getting booted or something?
No. The event kept getting booted.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, who's going to boot?
Yeah, I wasn't getting kicked. Who knows? I don't think it was personal.
So before we get into The Ghost That Ate Us, I want to talk about some of your other stuff real quick. I mean, you've written some or co-written some books with some pretty big directors, Guillermo del Toro and George Romero. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So what was the? I'm sure it's different with every author, celebrity mashup or whatever. What is that process like? Was it you wrote a chapter, they wrote a chapter, or do they do any writing at all? Or
yeah, it's wildly different. At this point, I've done collaborations with 4 different people, and each one has been a completely different situation. And I think if you write a bunch of books with the same person, I'm guessing you probably get into a routine that's pretty established. That's what I get from people I know who've collaborated with the same person repeatedly. I haven't really. I've done, I did 2 books with Guillermo, one with Romero, and then 2 other ones. And so it's been kind of remaking the wheel each time. But that's kind of good. I do like one of the big things that will probably be a theme tonight is that, I really like to shake up my writing situation. I want to make myself be sort of uncomfortable with the process, and that will it serves to kind of wake me up. And so collaboration is one of the best ways to do that, because you've got someone who you're going to have to bump up against, and hopefully most of the time that's going to be seamless thing, but I think critically and importantly, sometimes it's not, and you're going to have
Uh-huh.
different opinions, and you're going to butt heads a little bit, and that's good, I think.
So how did these collaborations come to be? I mean, did you reach out to Del Toro, or did he reach out to you, or you just know somebody
Well,
down at the bar and you guys
well,
called? And
yeah, I mean, again, it depends on the collaborator. For Guillermo, he had read a book of mine called Rotters, which is my second book about modern day grave robbers,
Mhm.
and read it and liked it, and it was just good timing. I think at the time he was looking for a co-author for a book he had sold called Troll Hunters, which most people know from the Netflix
from
app.
the Netflix show, I was gonna
Yeah,
say,
my kids watch it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I have a copy of it right beside me. But anyway, so I flew up to Toronto because he was shooting Pacific Rim at the time,
Okay.
and we talked about it. And I think just kind of hit it off, and it was a good vibe between us. And then sort of famously, that's the same meeting where I told him about what at the time was a book idea of mine for what ended up becoming Shape of Water.
Mhm.
So it was your idea?
Yeah, the initial seed of it was Shape of Water was kind of
Oh,
a book idea that I had been toting around with me since like middle school, earlier.
Wow.
Yeah, I really liked Creature from Black Lagoon when I was little,
Mhm.
right.
and had this idea. I mean, several of my books go way back. Scowler was based on a dream I had in middle school. Shape of Water was based on an idea I had. I don't know when, 12 years old, something like that. And
Mhm.
I think what it was is, and this is where I was so compatible with Guillermo because he basically, and it's kind of a touching story in a way, because Guillermo was, at the time I'm 12 years old in Iowa. Guillermo was, a young man in Mexico City, I think,
Mhm.
and we're both having the same reaction to a piece of art, which in this case
Right.
was Creature from Black Lagoon. And we both had the same thought, which was the creature got a raw deal.
Yeah.
Like he's
Yeah.
just sort of chilling in the Black Lagoon, not really doing much of anything. And then
Uh-huh.
all these like white hunters on boats keep coming in and messing with him. And so he's sort of defending his home, really.
Mhm.
And it's sort of a tragedy. And he seems kind of like this beautiful creature. So it was very sad in a way to see him fall. Um, so yeah, that's where the sort of Del Toro stuff
Right.
started.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
So when the
I
actual
could tell. I'm sorry. I could tell from Shape of Water. It's almost not exactly, but it's almost like from the point of view
Yeah.
of the main creature, and like you felt the sadness. I mean, you it was deep because it was a different perspective. You don't normally see a movie or read a book from that point of view.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit different, and that's what I appreciate about that the most. Because I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, you're fine.
But yeah, I think that's Guillermo and I are different artists in a lot of ways, but I think it's the ways that we are similar is that we're both really interested in or are sympathetic to the characters of
Yeah.
monsters, and
Mhm.
in a lot of my books, probably more so him than me, but me as well. I tend to more often write about human monsters, and
Mhm.
maybe I'm not sympathetic to them in the way that I am Creature from Black Lagoon, but I am sympathetic or I'm interested in making the reader feel sympathy and
Yeah.
seeing how
Yeah.
far I can stretch that. Like, can I give you a protagonist that you really like and then keep making it increasingly difficult for you to keep liking them? Like that's something
Yeah.
I like to play with and see how far I can stretch it.
Mhm. So with like the Shape of Water, with that process, did Del Toro, did he actually write some of that, or is he just like giving you ideas and you sort of flesh out the story yourself?
Yeah, it was a little bit of everything. I mean, it
Mhm.
was sort of done by the time it got going. It was really done on parallel tracks, sort of. He was writing the screenplay while I was writing the book.
Okay.
And so they share a lot of, a ton of DNA that way.
Mm-hmm.
But they're obviously a book is a book, so it's longer and has much more. Probably most critically, the book has points of view from the monster, so you get a sort of you get an interiority to the monster that you definitely don't get in the movie. You get a sense of what it is, or isn't, and kind of what it's more of what it's. I mean, it's hard to talk about without spoiling it, but it adds a different facet to it, certainly.
Was there any kind of butting of the heads, different ideals to change? Were you guys fighting about certain parts? Did you leave anything out? Or
I mean, surely, yeah. I mean, we definitely had different opinions on some elements of it, but he was sort of taking the lead. Even though the story, the idea originated with me, he, once he started moving on it, because I was busy writing Zebulon Finch books, or giant epic books. Once he started moving on Shape of Water, he was off to the races.
Yeah.
I was almost playing catch up at that point. So a lot of the major story beats are his, and I just gladly let him sort of take that away. But the cool thing was the book allowed me to take some of my favorite things that had been part of my idea for decades and work those in too. So I was, the only project I can think of that reminds me of it is the movie and book of 2001. Where they were sort of released simultaneously, and they both sort of follow the same plot points, but they're different works of art. Arthur C. Clarke's book and Kubrick's movie, sort of from 50,000 feet are the same thing, but once you get down to them, they're very different works of art. That is sort of how. That's kind of the model, I guess.
Kubrick was notorious from changing all of his adaptations anyways, so that
well, that's what was interesting about it, though. It was sort of simultaneous, just like ours were. So it wasn't really an adaptation. It was sort of a dual tracks sort of thing.
Right.
So it's like the same with Shape of Water. They both came out relatively the same time.
Yeah. How much did you have to do with the if any, the movie part? I think you're listed as a producer, right, for the movie part?
Yeah. Just my involvement in it was pretty limited. It was the idea, which is small but big.
Yeah.
And
without you, it wouldn't have happened anyway. So big idea.
Yeah, and I was so I'm technically a producer on it, and it was a neat experience. It's like I generally, as I was telling you guys offline, I generally am a hard worker who stays at home all the time and just works. But this was a weird opportunity to go to the Oscars and go to Venice,
right?
Go to these kind of events that are very foreign to me, and sort of experience that world in a way.
So with Troll Hunters, was that a completely different sort of work experience than Shape of Water with him, or was it relatively the same?
In some ways it was kind of similar. It was much more traditional in the sense that it was a book that then was adapted. That's the standard sort of way things happen. So we wrote a book. We wrote this book together, and it came at a just personally for me, it came at a really important time for me. I just come off my third book, Scowler, which was probably the darkest thing I've ever written, and the only time in my career, and at this point I've written 20 books or something. But at that point it was like the only part, the only moment in my career when I felt like giving up. Scowler was a very, very difficult project for me on a lot of different levels, and I was sort of depressed about it, about just everything, and it was a difficult book and a difficult time, and suddenly there was this project from Guillermo del Toro that kind of lands in my lap that is totally unlike anything I'd been doing. It was lighter and filled with optimism, and unlike anything that I had been inclined to do in the past, and it really was it really lifted me up in a way. It was uplifting. It was fun, and I had forgotten how to have fun, I think.
Yeah.
And I'll always be thankful to Guillermo for that project, just for like lifting me up. And after that, I've never slowed.
So
that
it was
Yeah.
like a total change of pace.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think ever since then, that's what I've tried to do with my career is constantly change the pace.
Yeah, like a welcome challenge because you're stepping out of your comfort zone of doing the
Totally.
dark and dreadful stuff, and now you get this kind of happy
Yeah.
you think kid thing,
More kiddish. Yeah.
Yeah, so I can definitely see that.
Was Troll Hunters your first? Is it considered YA or middle grade?
I think technically it's sort of in that
So that gray area between the two, kind of.
gray area. It's sort of like lower middle grade or lower YA or upper middle grade. I think it kind of is middle grade, even though I think
The show seems more middle grade, like for
the show
younger kids.
The show is considerably
Toned down some.
younger.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think the characters in the book were maybe even like freshmen in high school or something close to that, and was far darker. Not as dark as the stuff that I was doing before, but far darker than the TV show. We had trolls. My favorite troll in there was this kind of troll that big kind of chubby round trolls, and they would barf out all their organs so that they could like scale buildings and be really light.
Oh, nice.
So there were a lot of like really gross stuff like that.
So was that your first experience writing something for a younger audience?
Yes.
Was it?
Yeah.
And you talked
What do you
about
prefer? What do you prefer, the younger audience or the
I think I prefer writing for adults. What's great about writing for young adult, middle grade adult is that again, it's a way to wake myself up and change a pace, and it's also easier to work on multiple projects at once. I think when they're not too similar. So if I've got a sort of dense adult book that I'm writing, 4 days a week, and then I've got a much, in some ways simpler middle grade book. Like there's no getting confused with the tone. Like things are very distinct and separate.
No crossovers when you're writing the middle grade and you're putting adult stuff. Oh, I gotta fix it now. So.
Yeah. It's every project in that way becomes a palate cleanser for the project before it. So I found it to be really helpful to the writing. It actually makes the writing better to jump back and forth.
And normally you don't see authors flip back and forth between middle grade, young adult stuff. They usually stick to one age group. So have you felt like that's obviously it helped your writing because it sort of got you out of that funk, but has it helped your career, you think, to branch out? No.
Well, I think it's it's sort of yes and no. I think the yes version is that I've been able to put out a lot of stuff, like this year I got 7 different things coming out. In 2020 I had 5 books coming out, and because they're the audiences are so different that they don't really cannibalize each other much.
Yeah.
So I think overall the answer is yes. I have many more streams of art going on. But I do think confuses the marketplace a little bit. I think people, and it's sad that it's kind of a cliche, but unfortunately it's true. People do sort of want you to write the same kind of thing over and over.
Right.
That's that I have discovered that without a doubt.
Like my son to do that. So
it's like you mentioned with Romero, they only wanted him to do zombie movies.
Oh yeah.
Else.
So my second book was this book, Riders, and it was, it was a success. It really kicked off a lot of things for me, and I think I would be sort of doing better if I had just kept writing books like this, just over sort of variations on the theme.
Right.
And I've done the complete opposite. I've just done everything but. So that's but there's no way I could do it. If I had to do that, write the same kind of thing, I would just
burn out.
Oh, I would have no interest in writing. There's no way I could succeed.
Right. I think you see that also, not just writers. You see that with bands too. When people get mad at bands if they change their second or third album or fourth album, if they experiment with something too, just to cross over into other medias, because like they haven't been good since this first album. Well, it's called progressing and doing something different, changing it up some.
But, that you make a great point, because I think we've all been fans of a band who has gone in a weird direction, and we're just kind of like, that's not really for me.
Right.
So I understand it. Like, I get it. So that's why these different channels don't have to cannibalize. If you like, things in this vein, well, I've got sort of a channel that will give you sort of that, and then I've got other channels that you can just sort of ignore.
It's also the sort of a double-edged sword. Like, when you do change, people don't like it. But then if you keep the same, people are like, well, you just do the same stuff over and over again. You don't ever do anything different. So it's like, damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing sometimes.
Yeah, I always wonder, because I know writers who are on book 9 in their series, and I just don't know how they do it. I don't know if it's because, like most people my age, I grew up on, Stephen King, or someone who like didn't do sequels really.
Yeah.
Like that sort of the idea of a sequel is not really appealing to me. Like, I just want something new all the time. That's how I consume art generally too. I don't watch a lot of TV shows, because I don't like being stuck in a world for too long. I want constant change, and I want what I'm consuming to be radically different from night to night.
I think that's probably one of the big reasons why I don't read fantasy, because I think basically all fantasy, it's series. A lot of fantasy books become series. I need a conclusion a lot of times, and I just needed to go on to a different story. So I don't do a lot of fantasy at all, because I don't want to read 9 or 12 different books that are 1,000 pages each. But and we're still, like world building, and then the next 15 is when something actually happens. So I can totally see that.
Yeah, it's very rare to see a standalone fantasy book anymore. They're all at least trilogies or further on.
Yeah, and I've definitely, I'm not immune to it. Like I've got like a 2-volume set, Zebulon Finch. I think I'm frozen. Yeah, so I've got. This is a duology, I guess you call them, but that's only because you can't release one book that's
2,000 pages.
Exactly. You have to split it up. So I've got a couple projects like that for just page count reasons had to be divided up.
I mean, I can handle 2 or 3 books, if as long as they tie it up. But I mean, I can't get into whole. I can't.
Don't kid yourself.
No, because there are a couple that I'm looking at that are two or three books in the series, and they're going to wrap it up. But I can't go with 9, 10, 11. Just not into it. I don't have the mind. I don't have the attention to do that really. So because I'll get bored really quick. You want to move
Crystal
over
said
to the
No Gaiman sort of writes in all age groups. He's got Coraline and the adult stuff too.
Yeah, that's a good example, I think.
And it's your like the teddy bear series they threw us away. Is that I know there's 2 of those. Are those a part of the series, or are they standalone?
Yeah, so I've got the first one anyway here. So this is a quite kind of creepy existential teddy bear horror thing. That is a trilogy, but again, it was conceived of as a single story, and sold that way. And then it was a discussion of, do we want this to be a big, thick book for middle grade readers or not? Do we want to split it up into 3? So the choice was made to split them up into 3, but they're conceived all at once from a start to finish story.
That looks like a pretty creepy middle grade.
It is.
I like that cover a lot.
Really creepy.
Yeah, it's got this creepy art. I want to show you one piece of art from it where they sort of come up against this antagonist who's made from like discarded teddy parts.
Oh, geez, look at that.
That's cool.
That's nightmarish.
It's creepy stuff.
It's sort of a Like Goosebumps reading level, sort of the same vein as that.
Yeah, I would say texturally nothing like that, but
sort of target
yeah,
audience
reading level. Yeah,
Yeah.
Again, it's sort of Neil Gaiman does come to mind in the sense that it's you have to put a book, you have to put some sort of age grades on a book. You know, you have to pitch it to someone because it has to be published by a division of Macmillan or something.
Right.
But really, this is something that adults would be fine reading. You know, it's one.
I would totally read that. It looks awesome.
Yeah.
It really stretches from middle grade on to adult, just sort of based on that kind of tone, which is simple language wise, but sophisticated in other ways.
But it's not dumbed down. It's just geared towards a younger audience.
Yeah, it has prose that can be read and understood by a younger audience, and it's about teddy bears ostensibly. So,
I did want to ask before we switch subjects. You mentioned you're going to have 7 books come out this year in total.
This book, I have 7 projects. So I have
7 projects.
4 novels and 3 comic books coming out.
So there was a discussion on Twitter the other day, sort of about what authors think about, like, can you release too much? Can you put too much out there in a certain amount of time? How do you feel about that? Do you think you can sort of not overextend yourself, but
like oversaturate?
Oversaturate your market within a year time frame, 6 months, something like that, or do you feel different because you're kind of all over the place with different age groups and stuff?
I mean, it's possible. It's contracts for the real big publishers. That's generally like in the contracts. Like you can't have another whatever young adult book come out within X number of months close to this one. So they actually build in a padding for just that reason. Most of my books are published by big publishers, so I have to sort of play by those rules, which is why I can get away with it, though, because I'm publishing books that don't fight with the other books.
Yeah.
If I wanted to put out 5 adult horror novels in a year, that probably wouldn't be possible because I wouldn't want to do that. That's
you're competing with yourself, kind of.
Yeah, I think that would be too much. But as far as like, a kid's book of mine competing with an adult book, I'm not concerned about it.
Yeah.
2 different lists. Yeah.
5 novels in a year, that'd be way too much.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I had 5 novels come out in 2020. Terrible year for me to have 5 novels out. And none of them were anything like each other. They didn't overlap at all.
Yeah, I think it helps when if one's about zombies and one's about something different or whatever. If they're all very similar, I can see where you can sort of shoot yourself in the foot a bit about, well, I read this one, but this is by the same guy that feels similar to this one. Maybe I'll pass and read somebody else or something.
I think if if you have one age range you write in, I think you could oversaturate. But again, that's if you're publishing in small publishers, which aren't going to have those clauses, it's really up to you whether you want to give that a go.
Right.
Big publishers aren't even going to let you do it. So
speaking of 2020, how did the Living Dead come about? That was 2020, right?
It came out
last year.
Yeah. So I like to show my visual aids since I brought them all here.
Yeah, great.
So
that's a chunker too, isn't it?
Yeah, this is a big one. So I mean, some background here. Like George Romero is he's my favorite artist. Period. In any medium. I saw Night of the Living Dead when I was maybe 5 years old, something like that.
Yeah.
And famously, of course, it wasn't copywritten, so anyone could show that movie at any time, and they did. So growing up, it was just always on. I saw it a million times. My mom liked horror, so she would watch it, and I'd watch it with her. And I wouldn't be creating anything if it wasn't for George Romero. He was the most important artistic figure in my life. And, his films really taught me like what art can do. I think, I think even at a young age, when you watch The Night of the Living Dead, is particularly the ending.
Yeah.
It scrambles your brain. Like,
Yeah.
can movies do that? Can you have an ending like that? Like that seems to break all the rules. And I feel like when I saw Dawn of the Dead, that more than any class could have taught me what metaphor was, like that something could mean something else.
Hmm.
And I became a real student of his, and not just his zombie movies, but everything. And so it's the sort of short version is that his manager, Romero's manager, knew me a little bit,
Yep.
and we went out. We met with George once. He came in to Chicago, where I live, and his manager set up that we could all have a drink together, and it was that it was great for me to be able to meet him. But it was nothing much. It was just a small little thing, and that was it. And then 10 years passed, um, and then George dies, and it's very sad. And then about a month later, I get a phone call from this manager, who I haven't been in touch with for 10 years,
Yeah.
saying I'm here with George's wife, and we're kind of going through these projects he was working on. Then he has this unfinished novel,
Ooh.
and at that point, I had done Troll Hunters and Shape of Water, so I had
Yeah, nice resume. Yeah.
yeah, I had collaborated in a successful way,
Hmm.
and they knew that I was a student of George's, and I think importantly was a fan of his body of work, and not just a zombie fan. It's a very different.
Yeah.
Right.
Generally, my favorite works of his weren't his zombie stuff,
Hmm.
and they thought I would take the project really seriously. And asked me if I wanted to take a stab at it. So, to be able to, and this, really, The Living Dead. It's crazy. It is sort of the finale. It's built. The middle section is built so that all of his 6 zombie movies fit into the middle. So you can sort of read the book, pause, watch his movies, and continue with the book.
That's cool.
And it finishes the zombie story. So to be able to have a part in finishing the story that was the story that began me, really, Night of the Living Dead, is an unbelievable opportunity to kind of close the circle that you just don't ever get in life.
Yeah.
So I took it, it was like I was restoring the Sistine Chapel or something. I mean, I took it.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of pressure, really. I like because you're working on something with one of your heroes, basically. It's just
it was a lot
it's
of
like
pressure.
a legacy thing too.
Yes.
This is his. I guess was it his only book?
Yeah.
38. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a lot of pressure, but it also felt like something I've been training for. Like I did have a lot to say about zombies and Romero and his viewpoint on the world, and I had a lot of theories, and so I started. I took what he had, and I started this an intense period of a few months of just study, like studying all of his films, obviously, and his interviews and his commentary tracks and interviews with people, his wife, long interviews with him, trying to figure out what were his likes and dislikes, what were his views on this and that, and trying to piece together the puzzle, because The Living Dead, it wasn't like he wrote a certain number of pages and stopped. It was much more complicated than that. He wrote a bit that belonged to the beginning. He wrote some stuff in the middle. He wrote some stuff from the very end, and it was like missing.
Yeah.
I had to build all these bridges. So another thing I did that I thought was a weird idea but really worked out was I studied the things that he really loved. So I found out from his wife what were his favorite movies, what was his favorite music. And I studied those things, thinking that, okay, maybe I don't have George to ask questions to, but I know the art that he was obsessed with. And maybe if I get obsessed with that art too, if I obsess upon it, I can draw some of the things that he was drawing from it. And most importantly among these, and this is no secret, was that he was obsessed with this movie, The Tales of Hoffmann, which is a filmed version of an opera.
Okay.
And, ever since way back to Night of the Living Dead days, he just every interview talks about Tales of Hoffmann, Tales of
Right.
Hoffmann. So what was his thing with this movie? So I really studied that, and then I felt like, at some point, secret doors started to open. I started to see, oh, this is. I see it now. I see everything that he was getting from this. So I actually structured the book on top of I used the opera's 3-act structure as sort of the scaffolding upon which to build The Living Dead. And then, and it was really interesting because the book goes 15 years into the future, further than any of the movies did. So it became a sort of situation where if I could figure out what he was up to with his zombie work up to a point, could I then logically extrapolate where it was headed?
Yeah.
And so that's what I started to do, is plot out these other points. Because I actually had the final point, because he had sort of put down on paper what the final point was. So I just had to figure out what was going on in the middle, and amazing things started to happen.
Yeah.
I started, and if you read the book, there's an extensive author's note at the end that sort of explains why I made certain decisions. And they're all based on, it's just my interpretation, of course. But
right. I was going to say, I mean, did you get any sort of backlash from anyone saying that you didn't get the vision correct? Because I mean, it seems like you had the vision and you went with it and it was successful. I didn't know if you got any kind of backlash. The diehard fans. Well, you didn't do it any justice, because it sounds like you did. Sounds like you did.
I haven't heard any, but I haven't heard any backlash. But it's got to exist.
Right.
There has to be somebody unhappy with it. But that's why the author's note is so instructive, because I'm fully admitting this is my interpretation of where I think he was going, what he was up to, and I explain all my decision, what clues I took from his work to predict certain eventualities in the story. So I lay it all out. So it's up whether you agree or not. That makes it really easy to decide whether or not I'm full of shit or not. You just have to. I lay it all out.
But it sounds like you were.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was saying, it sounds like you were really respectful with it and cared for it, though. You didn't just, let's write a zombie book and slap George's name on it.
No,
you very much cared about his vision and his source material and all that stuff.
I was never in my life going to write a zombie book. It was not going to happen. I had, deep abiding love for Romero's zombie works. I almost never feel like, he had said it the best, but now when I had this chance, it was like,
that's something you can't pass up.
No. And I just put everything into it, and everything that I thought he wanted to put into movies and couldn't. And we had some hard evidence of some of that stuff, like whether it was drafts of zombie movie screenplays that he couldn't get made, or things that he would tell interviewers or his family, or things he'd say in commentary tracks. There were these things he did want to do and just never either had the budget for or could find out a way to make it work.
It's like I'm thinking of like Frankenstein right now, because it's almost like you had the pieces of his and you had to build a monster, basically. And that's what the book is. And I was just going to say, I appreciate the fact that you keep referring to writing as an art, because that's one of the things I've already said, that writing is an art. And not everyone says that, but that's just one of my little crutches. I've already said, because I'm a big fan of different kinds of artwork myself. So I've already said, writing is an art. So it's going to be interpreted way different between each person. And that's just the way art is. So I can appreciate that you keep referring to it as an art.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I could talk about this all night. Like I've got there's so many. I mean, just take one example. It it began to be obvious. It sort of snuck up on me as I was doing my research that he was really interested in zombie animals. And if you watch all 6 of his zombie movies, there's not a zombie animal in any of them.
Right.
But I started finding little bits of in his interviews where he would talk about zombie animals and how he wanted to do that. And he'd commentary track. He'd say, "Ooh, I need to," and he would always make it sound like he was cooking something up. And then I read the screenplay for Land of the Dead, and there was a zombie rat scene in it that he didn't shoot, that cut at the last moment. And once I had and it was very clear that he was going to do something with zombie animals. He never did. He died. He didn't get a chance. So with that information, I started really puzzling about it. And I was thinking, all right, so if one of the things he was going to do next in the evolution of the zombie was create zombie animals, what did that mean? You know, like you could just say, "Okay, great, zombie animals, yay, it's fun." If you want to think about it philosophically, like, what does it mean if he's got zombie animals attacking people, right? If you really think about that, you begin to realize that he's answering a question that has always dangled out there, which is, is this a cannibalistic thing that's happening? Are zombies eating other humans? And the answer is no, because if zombie animals were attacking other normal animals, if the zombie rats were attacking regular rats, that's one thing. But all of the zombies, whether they're human or animal, were attacking humans. So then you begin to realize that what's happening here is an anti-human phenomenon. And so then you have that brings up other questions like, so if this is an anti-human thing happening here, why would the world be doing this? Why is the world attacking humans? What has changed, and what have humans done wrong to warrant being attacked like this? And so then you go back to his original idea for Night of the Living Dead, which he talked about in interviews all the time, how it was based on this short story, and how he always considered that he wrote that has been lost, that it was about an uprising. It was about a sort of a class of people, the zombies, sort of toppling a crooked ruling class. And you begin to think of it as that. People always said that the zombie plague, the zombie disease. That wasn't it at all. It's the human disease, and the zombies are the antibodies that that the earth has created to cleanse the world of the human cancer in a way. So all these things, amazing things, start to open up once you just start thinking seriously about them.
Right.
It could all be bullshit, and I could be completely off the mark, but it's I could also be right, and it's at least fun to play that out and start to make interesting connections like that.
I mean, looking at it like, if the animal zombies are attacking the humans and the human zombies are attacking the humans, it's almost like saying the humans are the real monsters here. And it's this whole other uprising trying to get rid of those real I don't know. I'm just, reading into it a little bit too. So
yeah,
it reminds me of I think The Happening that had Mark Wahlberg in there. It's different avenues. It's not zombies, but it's the plants are attacking all the humans, trying to wipe out the humans because global warming and pollution, all that stuff. So it's a different vehicle, but sort of same concept.
Yeah,
the Earth doing something to eradicate the humans because we're the bad guys messing everything up.
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting theory anyway.
There's something up here that James put. I don't know if you have any say on this. Did George direct Poltergeist or not? He's heard so many different takes on it. Do you have any insider information about that?
I think what James is asking is, did Tobe Hooper direct Poltergeist? Because there's sort of an ongoing controversy whether Steven Spielberg or Tobe Hooper really directed Poltergeist. The people I know who know Tobe Hooper strongly in those uncertain terms say that Tobe Hooper directed Poltergeist. But then, of course, Steven Spielberg was there, and
right.
It feels very much like a Steven Spielberg movie.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
But Tobe Hooper was a bit of a chameleon, so he could make he could direct films in a lot of different ways. So it's
he could have been in his ear, somehow.
Yeah, exactly. He's there. I mean, he's an important creator.
Yeah.
So if you were to, do you have a favorite of Romero's works, like a movies wise, that you'd recommend people to check out?
I mean, my sentimental favorite obviously is Night of the Living Dead. Of his zombie movies, that one's set aside because that's not even like a movie to me. That's more just like a almost like an album that I really like. So that aside of the zombie movies, my favorite is Day of the Dead, which I think is just a tremendously rich work. That aside, everyone should obviously see Martin. It's hard to see right now. In the US, it's almost impossible to see,
right?
But it's it's a masterpiece. Something that's easy to see, and that is one of my favorite films ever. It's Creepshow. This is actually from the TV series, but the movie is it's just so much fun.
Yeah,
it was another big movie for me as a kid before I really even pieced together that it was the same person who made Night of the Living Dead. I love Creepshow. I have a real soft spot for his final film, Survival of the Dead, which most people haven't seen, or if they have seen, don't particularly like. But I love it. The funny thing, or the amazing thing, really about George is I don't think he ever made a bad movie. Some are better than others. Whenever he worked with a big studio system, I think he suffered a bit. He was better doing kind of renegade productions on his own, but they're all good. I think The Amusement Park, which was rediscovered and released last year, is actually one of my favorite movies of his.
That's very trippy, and I got a kick out of it. So
so I would
disturbing and trippy, and that's a win for me.
I would definitely recommend seeing The Amusement Park if you haven't. I think it's still on Shudder.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I watched
zombies or
watched
is it
it on
different?
Shudder.
Oh, it's different.
It's a whole different world. Really,
it was a work for hire that he made right around the time of the Crazies. He was hired by this is insane, but he was hired by like the Lutheran Association to make an hour-long movie about sort of anti-aging sentiment, about not taking care of our elderly. And for some bizarre reason, I hired George Romero for this, and he made this absolutely insane, intense, almost like hallucinatory, horrifying, really, film. That
right, because the abuse for the elderly really shines. Basically,
it's
the way it's all set up. Yeah.
It is one of his bleakest, most disturbing things, and it just vanished. No one knew it. People forgot it ever existed because it was only ever seen in like churches and like old folks homes and stuff.
78, 79, around that time.
Yeah.
I want to say 79. I think I read somewhere. Yeah.
And so then it's kind of rediscovered, and it's funny because the last act of The Living Dead has a lot to do with aging and hospice care, for lack of a more rich term. But I knew of the amusement park. Most people had never heard of it, but I knew about it because I'd read about it long ago in this sort of academic book. And one of the first questions I asked Suze, his wife, when I met her was, do we have any idea where the amusement park is? And that's when she was like, yeah, we recently found it. We found it right before George died. And
wow.
Then she showed it to me, and it was able to really affect how I wrote the end of this book, because suddenly I had all this information from George on old people and elderly care and the stuff that I would have never had any input on. So it was like a gift.
I always think it's wild when stuff like that gets lost to time or whatever it gets lost to, like movies and books people write and they just disappear. No one knows what happened to them. That just blows my mind sometimes.
Well, I mean, there was at this point, we've rediscovered 3 different movies that George has made 2 of them short films and 1 the amusement park that were completely off the map that everyone had forgotten about. And you think, how is it possible that no one was?
I know it's so bizarre.
Boggles the mind, but and who knows what else we'll still find.
When was the one we were talking about off air? The Jaconda Joe. When was that one made? Do you know?
Jaconda Joe just had its sort of online premiere a few days ago, and that was made in the early '90s, I think.
Okay.
And it was a very early example of a found footage type of movie. It's really good. It's about, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes long, but it really is the first 15 minutes of a feature that he wanted to make and then never made it. But
that could be your next project since you finish his work.
Yeah, I mean, it's so good too. But again, that was something that a year ago no one had ever heard of. So
yeah, I think it was
somehow slid off.
University of Pittsburgh or something. They said they found it, restored it, and they did the online screening the other day.
Yeah, the first time when I was going through George's archives, a few years ago, it was the first time I'd ever, I saw a piece of paper that said Jaconda Joe on it. I was like,
what is this?
But it was, the archive is filled with scripts, so I just figured this was a script of something he never finished.
Yeah. So you just have tons and tons of scripts that just never saw the light of day.
Yep, tons, many.
That's wild. Just all that stuff there, just to mine all those ideas from.
Yeah, if it, particularly in the last half of his career, if it wasn't zombies, no one was going to let him make it. So
that's unfortunate too. You segue, Jay?
Well, I was going to say, let's slide into the book that I'm trying to get it straight on there.
The Ghost That Ate Us.
Twitterverse is going crazy with.
So
what did we say? July?
Yeah,
July 12th. July 12th, I think. So this is very much different than what I was expecting it to be. I was expecting it to be like, I guess, a straightforward prose novel, but it's more of a very nonfiction, true crime, documentary style book.
Mm-hmm.
Was this a lot mockumentary?
As it says, yeah. Was this harder for you to write than your prose stuff like The Living Dead and everything, or was it easier? Or?
Again, it was it was an attempt to sort of shake it up a little bit. This is written entirely as if it's true. So it's got photographs, footnotes. It's written as if it's Daniel Kraus, is writing a nonfiction book about this well-known poltergeist event at this fast food joint. And it's an entirely different process, because when you're writing a nonfiction book about a crime or something, you have all the information at the start. And if you read a nonfiction book, it's very clear that we're not discovering things along with the author. They have all the information. And so before I could even start this book, I had to know everything about everyone. I had to know, not just the restaurant shift schedules and stuff like that, but I needed to know what happened on every day from everyone's point of view, where everyone was at all times, so that I could so I could always reference backwards and forwards in time. So when something happened to a character, I could say, and this would happen again in 18 months and blah, blah, you had to have a 360 view on everything. So it required a ton of work up front.
Right.
So that I essentially had what in a real nonfiction book would be just all the evidence. I had to create all the evidence first.
That seems like a very daunting task.
Right.
Well, it was in a way, that's a lot of work to do before you're doing your writing.
Well, I mean, I can appreciate the attention to detail, because there was a part that it's kind of early. I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but it was kind of early, and it hit me, and I was like, I wonder if he ever worked fast food, because I did. And you described the break room, and it is to a T of how fast food break rooms are. You described it as like a windowless 9x7 box, and that is exactly when I was in fast food, like they still smoked in the back in the break room. So you're in this little box, no windows, and you're on your 15-minute break or your 30-minute break, and you're trying to eat real quick. You're just smoking like crazy, and smoke's just hovering there. I read that part. I was like, I wonder if you ever worked fast food, if he remembers this from fast food. It is to a T how fast food break room is.
Well, I didn't work in fast food, but I worked in restaurants and various other jobs that had terrible break rooms.
Right.
And I did a ton of research on fast food. Like, you know, if you poke around, you can find like manager manuals from McDonald's, Burger City, or Burger King, and like employee manuals. There's just endless Reddit posts of people who work at fast food telling you what it's like, what the job entails, all the gross things people do. Like, you know, you could look into it endlessly. It's a pretty.
There's always like the outdated rules. It talks about state minimum, you know, and it's 20 years outdated. It's still there for some reason. Yeah. Like I had like a really like. I didn't start hyperventilating, but I was like, oh my gosh, it's like a flashback from when
flashbacks.
I worked. I was like, oh, the attention to detail. This is extreme here.
Where did you work at, Jay? What fast food?
I was at McDonald's for like 10 years. That's how I worked. I worked my way through my senior year of high school, worked my way through college that way.
Yep.
So, yeah.
I never worked in fast food, but the only food I've worked in is I worked third shift in Walmart, and I was responsible for stocking all the dairy stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm the freezer scene in here. I'm being in that big freezer in Walmart.
Yeah.
I actually started at Dairy Queen when I was 14. So yeah, from 14 to until I got out of college, it was just food industry.
Well, I mean, part of what I wanted to write about was, you know, a lot of ghost stories or poltergeist stories, they deal with family units, you know, and what I wanted to sort of explore was the kind of family that jobs like that create. And I think they tend to happen most when you're a young worker. So you work at a fast food restaurant or a regular restaurant or whatever. I worked at a lot of movie theaters when I was young.
Yeah.
And so like you bond in a really, you can, if it's the right mix of people, they become a kind of other family for you because you're seeing them constantly and you're with them every night, and it becomes a dysfunctional family with everyone serving different roles. And so I was really curious to introduce a poltergeist ghostly event into that kind of family, and even more so since this is an off the interstate fast food joint in the middle of nowhere in Iowa. It starts to represent to these people a way out. You know, some of these people working in this fast food restaurant feel like this is it for them. They're going to work at this fast food joint forever.
Yeah.
And suddenly there's this force that's moving things around. You know, it's moving burgers around the grill, and it's moving the cardboard character stand up a few inches every day at 4:30. And once people start getting excited about it and showing up with their cameras to record it, it starts to feel like suddenly they're in the middle of something really cool.
Right.
And that this may be their escape from this fast food life that looked mapped out for them. And then everything kind of goes to hell.
It all goes bad.
Yeah, it reads so much like it needs to be a Netflix series, flat out.
It feels like Netflix was taken from the screen and slapped onto the page.
Right, because I got a feeling. What is it? American Vandal? Is that the show Netflix? Got a couple.
Yeah, I really think that's an appropriate example. It's sort of like a horror American Vandal. It has that sort of punky kind of energy.
Right. Right, because all the detail and the footnotes. I mean, that I got a kick out of that too, because it looks so realistic. You know, with like you're reading a nonfiction situation. Not to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read it yet. Just read it, get it.
Well, I'll say some of the footnotes are probably real, aren't they? Like, have like stats about percentage of Iowans who are vegetarians, and then like the minimum wage stuff, and then you have like the Burger City ones. Like those are made up, but they might be from the McDonald's manual kind of thing you're referencing instead.
I mean, I couldn't say for sure, but I would say easily half the footnotes are real. They're real articles that I'm citing. And then the other half are made up, and it's a mix.
It kind of points out the little rivalries too, because what was it, the person knew about McDonald's, but it was Wendy's that made him decide to really start his own kind. So yeah.
That was really, I mean, it's really fun to do that. It's obviously another layer of work to create this sort of living bibliography as you're going through it, and the photos and the captions and all that. But yeah, it was always kind of the goal to make it feel 100% accurate. So if you really just pick this book up out of a bin and weren't looking at it really carefully, you might get all the way through it and think that it was real.
Yeah.
I tried to play it realistic enough that, it's not like, you get to page 100 and it's like, oh, this is, there's a ghost running around killing people. No, it's never like that. It's always like rides that line where it's like, well, this could just be people getting overly excited about nothing.
So was any of this in here, any of the ghostly stuff, was that based on anything you've experienced or you heard a friend experience or anything like that? Was any of it quote unquote true at all that you drew from?
There's lots of things in the books that I drew from real life, but none of the poltergeist stuff. I have not experienced anything like that. It would be a lot of fun if I could say yes. But
you can go ahead and say yes. So you can tell us a story if you want.
But I know people who I respect and trust who have had weird experiences. I haven't, and I don't know that I believe in it. But I believe in people who believe in it, and that's kind of what's important in this story is that when that ghost or poltergeist represents freedom for you, a major change in your life, you really want to believe. And at one stage in the book, the kids are going there late at night and putting burgers on the grill and trying to measure if the burgers move by themselves across the grill. And it's like you can sense how excited they are and how badly they want it to be true. And the burgers do move, but is the grill just crooked?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, really.
So it's, I try to make it always, up for debate whether or not something really dangerous was happening.
Yeah, again, it feels realistic. Like like you said, there's no big ghost that jumps out at the end and is killing everybody. It's maybe it is, maybe it's not. It's always up in the air. Could go either way.
Yeah, you really captured the, I guess, the area of the country without me ever being there. I mean, just the kind of names that were used and the actions of the characters and the way the interviews were. And again, going back to the way that the managers ran the shifts a certain way, like again, it was just flashbacks for me. And it made it so much relatable because I mean, there is a huge population of fast food workers that are still there and that may have done it in the past. And now that they'll read this and like, you know what? That's happened in my Wendy's before, or that's happened in my McDonald's or Burger King before. It's just somewhat of a relatable story.
Yeah, I mean, some of these, and I'm sure it depends on the franchise location, but some of these working some of these jobs is just a horror show itself.
Yeah,
like some of the things that go on there is just it's not safe, it's not sanitary, certainly not healthy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was as much about that as anything. I grew up in small town Iowa, right around where I set this book, and those are the kind of places I remember. That's there was nowhere else to go. You went to McDonald's or Hardee's. If you drove anywhere, it was on Interstate 80, and you would go to a Wendy's on the off ramp. Like these are just the places that you existed in. These kind of off-ramp areas that are just these ugly, trash strewn,
just hole in the walls,
weedy areas with the cars zooming by on the interstate like 50 feet away. And I think, to some people that's a foreign spot, but when you're from a state like Iowa, like I was, like that's it. That's the reality.
I like that you said it in a restaurant, because normally, ghost stuff, it's a haunted house or an old castle or whatever.
Right.
This was a completely different breath of fresh air because I've never read anything about a haunted restaurant or anything different like that before. So that was a nice change of pace.
Yeah,
you get burned out on it's a haunted house, so it's kind of the same stuff.
Yeah.
It's a haunted restaurant, so
and I thought
the cooler's haunted and the fryer's haunted. It's all different stuff.
Yeah, like why not? Like why does it always have to be a house, that has history? Like a place like a fast food restaurant, I mean, that has even more history. You're having employees move in and out of there constantly. So tons of souls have been there. And one of the fascinating things that the book gets into, and one of the characters has a theory that the poltergeists or the ghosts or whatever they are not human, that they're actually animals. That all the spirits of all these animals who are slaughtered to make in sort of horrible conditions to make you your nuggets and your Big Macs,
your little beefy patties, and
what we call beefy burgers in this book. Like what if they're upset?
The souls of the animals being cooked right there.
What if all these big restaurant signs that stick way up on the interstate, what if those are basically the gravestones for millions of animals who've just been chopped up so we can have our food?
I won't look at signs like the same now that you said that. Like, because you see them from the interstate all the time.
Yeah.
Get
like
off this
100 feet
exit
tall.
if you want. Yeah. If you want this or this, get off this exit. Now I'm like, oh crap, how many cows died there?
Yeah. I mean, the normal like haunted house thing, it has a set of presumptions that are a little arrogant, really. Like it always has to be humans. It always has to do with like the family, like the blood relation family. But why couldn't it be animals? Why couldn't it be your work family, who actually probably spend more time with than your real family? Like there's all these other like logical things that sort of I feel like are untouched. Like when was the last time you read a book about a fast food industry? I mean, the amount of people who eat at fast food restaurants dwarfs any other place. It's just like it's a constant presence in American life, and it feels untouched.
And it's very relatable because everyone has been to some type of fast food restaurant. Whether you're a vegetarian or not, you go to McDonald's and eat your salad with your family. Everyone's been to Taco Bell, McDonald's, Wendy's, whatever it may be. So everyone can relate in some way to it. Whether you've worked fast food or not, you've 99.9% chance you've eaten fast food.
Yeah.
In your research for this, did you actually interview fast food workers or any?
Yeah, some.
Did they think they were going to be part of like an actual documentary or?
No, I told them what I was up to.
Okay.
Most of it was online, like all the details about how the fryers worked and how the shake machines, which are the bane of existence in any fast food.
McDonald's.
My wife could tell me because like my youngest daughter, we have to go to McDonald's. So every time we pull up, she's always like, what's everybody want? And I always say, ask if their shake machine's working.
Yeah.
And that's been like just a running gag, and she won't do it. So
the thing that I found out doing my research is that the shake machines at fast food places are just everyone's nightmare.
Yeah.
Like they break constantly. They're really difficult to clean and repair.
Flashbacks.
And so there's plot points in the book that revolve around what we call in my book the chili machine. And what a just constant nightmare it is.
Yeah. Sort of off subject, but recently I saw McDonald's is getting sued because some company made these things that are supposed to help clean the shake machines really easily, and the McDonald's bought a bunch of them and they still said it wasn't working, so that company's suing them. They did all these stats about different McDonald's and their shake machines, and basically they weren't actually breaking, they just were hard to clean, so they're saying it's broken because they just didn't want to clean it. So whoever this company is suing McDonald's for sort of defamating their product, saying it didn't work to clean the machines or something. That's fairly recent. I saw that in the last couple of months or so.
I mean, from what I understood, you have to take the entire. I don't know if this is interesting to anyone listening. You have to take the entire machine apart.
Pretty much, yeah. If I remember correctly, I mean it's a huge stainless steel freezer basically sitting right there. But yeah, I remember all the front came off and pieces on the top came off, and you had to clean all that, and it was a pain.
The gross thing is they can't legally call it like ice cream or ice cream shake because there's no dairy.
No dairy.
Right.
It's got something called in my product's called chili, so it's called like a chili fluid. Like,
just sounds disgusting.
Of some sort. Yeah.
You'd think they would make them easier to clean instead of being such a pain, because I'm sure they make a bunch of money off that when it's actually working. Like that, the soft drinks, they probably make the most money off that stuff.
Yeah.
McDonald's and this show just turned into like fast food chat, but McDonald's has its own university, Burger University. They have it, so you would think they're coming up with sandwiches nonstop and different things. You would think they would come up with a different kind of shake machine, because everything is in house for McDonald's. I don't think they outsource anything at all. Just stuff I learned when I was there. But yeah, weird.
That's like in this. There's the Burger City University that Bob went to, and so what was like the idea for this? Where did this come from for you to do this documentary style ghost story?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think it was really just baked into the original idea. Like, I think that almost came first, and the details came second. What I really wanted to do a book version of a mockumentary. I wanted to do true crime and these sort of paranormal investigation books are more or less true crime books.
Yeah.
They're true crime is so popular now. And I wanted to write something that sort of commented on the popularity of true crime and both the sort of understandable, enjoyable sides of it, but also sort of the maybe salacious and less, I don't know, maybe less worthy sides of it. I think we've all probably felt that experience when reading or watching some true crime thing that felt like it was adding to humanity in somebody. We were learning something. And then you've seen ones that just feel like, why are we just watching this? Person and just rehashing how they got slaughtered and what is that?
Reenactments.
Like why am I watching this? That it really sort of some true crime, I think, really speaks to our sort of worst instincts to gawk at a roadside accident. So, and to sort of, to be fair about it, I cast myself as the true crime writer. I cast myself as the person who is maybe at some points in the book doing something kind of honorable, and maybe at some points in the book not, and just sort of staring at the accident. And then, and don't worry, I'm not giving anything away, but the book does have some surprises. And I think, by the time you get to the very end, it does raise sort of a lot of questions about the genre as a whole, or at least that was sort of the intent, and how it ended up being a fast food place and all that. I'm not exactly sure. I think I found it humorous in a way that you would just set something, it horrifying in a place that's generally silly or a subject of ridicule, like a fast food place where everything has silly, all the items have silly names, and everyone's wearing dorky hats.
You sort of took that silliness to like another level with like the names of the burgers, like being a little beefy about the dog and the puppy pen for the kids and stuff. It's
a fun place that's sort of kid oriented. So to take but it's not like behind the scenes. It's a jerk manager,
Yeah.
working kids for minimum wage too hard, and it's not clean, and it's not the fun candy colored plastic playland that it makes itself out to be. Everyone knows McDonald's not that. Everyone knows McDonald's has a lot to answer for in society. So I think it's a rich setting, a really rich setting that just has not been plumbed at all.
You were talking about just a minute ago about the poltergeist maybe being animals. Was that a conscious thing to sort of harken back to George and sort of the zombie animals at all, or is that just?
No, it's the thing with George was a kind of part of a major realization of how to structure an entire 700-page novel. This was more of an offshoot idea. Like the book is really not about that, but it is something to contend with. I think if you're writing a book that takes place in a sort of McDonald's type setting, you can't ignore the fast food nation element of it.
Yeah,
the idea that there is a giant corporate monolith that operates gigantic factory farm type slaughterhouses that that if you're a carnivore, and I am, that you have to be a good human being, you have to think about these things. You have to think about it. You can't. It's like if you're religious and never question the existence of God, then you're not really religious. Like you have to look at what you're eating straight in the eye and ask yourself occasionally, is this okay? So I didn't want to shy away from any of that.
Hopefully we don't have like McDonald's and Wendy's and all of them coming out. Don't read this book.
We're losing all our sponsorships.
That would be no. I mean, that would that'd be
good publicity for the book, is what it would be
at the same time. So yeah, you got McDonald's and Wendy's and Burger King. Hey, don't read the new Daniel Kraus book. Your sales will go so high.
Yeah, that would be a good place to be banned, I suppose.
One thing I thought was fun in here was without giving too much away, the ghost show. And you you listed off all these ghost shows. Like, I watch a lot of those.
Yeah.
Like I don't believe in ghosts personally. I'm a see it, believe it guy. If I experience it, maybe, but I've never experienced anything to make me believe. But I do find those shows interesting, even though in the back of my mind, I'm pretty sure it's all fake. They're making it all up for TV. There's something about them that is just interesting. And the one you created is a little bit even more over the top than the ones you see a lot on TV. Sort of a caricature of what you normally see.
To fill in people who are, might be listening, we're talking about a section in the book where one of the Travel Channel ghost shows, and I list all of them in the book.
Yeah, you listed like 30 of them.
That's what the Travel Channel is now.
It's just all paranormal.
Well, the little footnote about the Learning Channel made me laugh because, like, it used to be these learning shows, and now it's like Honey Boo Boo and all this stuff. Like, it's so sad. Yeah,
they shifted over the Travel Channel. I don't know when Travel Channel became entirely paranormal investigators.
Yeah.
But I watch those when I'm in hotel rooms. Like they don't enter my life any other time. But when I'm in hotel rooms, I swear to God, the only thing I ever see is Shark Tank and paranormal ghost shows.
It's like the go-to channels they have for those. Yeah.
So I found myself, when I was traveling, like having a relatively steady diet of these shows that were extremely easy to lampoon. And I know you say I sort of exaggerated, but I don't feel like I really do. Like I feel like I pretty much, I literally watch these shows and modeled what people say in the intro to the show exactly out of the shows.
My favorite one is probably Ghost Adventures, once you mentioned, and it is the dubbed over intro with the ghost and the actors dressed up as ghosts and all that stuff, and they've got all their fancy gadgets that who knows what they actually do. Spinning lights.
They never explain what the gadgets, how they work. They're like, okay, I have this Ghost You Later 5000, and it translates what's the ghost say. okay, how? Like, that's really important information that you haven't told us.
Yeah, I haven't watched them for ages, but my wife still watches them. But like I remember, what was it with the two plumbers? They're
It's the Taps guys. I can't remember what their show
they're
is,
plumbers,
but
but then part time they were doing this, and they were like, it was always when they were playing it back, listening to the sounds.
Yep.
Like, did you hear that? Did you hear that? And the thing is, when I worked, they're using the exact same equipment that I used when I was working in radio. And I'm like, I have that program. How are they getting anything special, anything higher, any kind of special sound that I didn't get when I was recording, commercials and doing my shifts and stuff? It's like, come on.
because you were in a haunted radio station, Jay.
Exactly. I mean, they saw these little, it was dust in the air. They called them orbs and stuff. Yeah. It was come on.
And that's, and that show, which in my book, it's called the Spectral Journeys show.
Yeah.
When the Spectral Journeys people show up and they do an episode on the Burger City poltergeist, it's a big turning point in the book because everyone's so excited about it. And then the result of the show is not what the employees had hoped it would be. And that starts really up till then, it's sort of the rise of the Burger City staff and being excited and happy about what's going on. And then that starts the fall in which they all start kind of turning on each other.
Yeah. And you sort of, the ghost hunter people in the book sort of make commentary on, they've never investigated a place like this, like a restaurant or anything. And normally it's house or whatever. So that's sort of bringing that back, it's a different location, not only for the book, but for this ghost show too. Because I've seen like bars and stuff on the ghost shows, but never like a fast food restaurant. Like, and they're usually like the old Western bars where, Wyatt Earp shot everybody, something from 200 years ago, something like that, but nothing
prisons
new. Yeah. A lot of prisons and.
Yeah. But, I think in a place like Iowa, and I think this is probably in the book, they make up something about Native Americans being buried there. I mean, that's like the standard
go-to
standard Midwest ghost excuse, really.
Mm-hmm. So did you do research by watching these shows in your hotel room to pull that aspect of it into the story?
Yeah. I mean, I made it a point at some point, when I was writing the book, I made it a point to watch these things and really study kind of the editing and just the structure of the episodes.
Yeah. And that seems like a natural progression with how popular it was getting on social media, that it would eventually get to, a travel channel show or something like that.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the book that really just traces how viral phenomena happen. Like there's someone, the Lil Beefy, which is the mascot of the restaurant, is the first phenomena. At 4:30 every afternoon, it hops a little bit. And so that becomes a thing, and people start showing up at 4:30 to watch the Little Beefy do his little hop. And then the local news comes by and does a little piece on it. And then someone famous who's from Iowa retweets something about it. And then it goes up the echelon until it's a trending topic on Twitter. And then, it gets the attention of Travel Channel. And, it all felt natural. And I really dig into it for like, this is how TikTok worked at this time, in 2017 when the book was set, and this was how Instagram worked and how you were able to upload a certain length of video. And, I really get into sort of how quickly something can go viral.
Right.
Yeah. Cause I think they put it on their YouTube and you said it got like 50 million views or something crazy like that, which that sounds like something that would happen. This cardboard cut of a dog hopping through, everybody would watch it.
And the reason it happens is because it's funny. Like it's in a fast food joint, so everyone thinks it's funny. And so everyone's passing around and retweeting this ridiculous, all these Iowa yokels getting excited about this unexplained phenomenon. I mean, it's just intrinsically funny. And the funniness of it, that it happens to be in a fast food joint, is kind of what seals its doom.
It is.
For those new, we're talking to Ghost that ate us. And what do we say? July 12th?
July 12th.
Yes. Raw Dog Screaming Press is releasing this one. And again, major thanks to Aaron for helping set this interview up with us, obviously. So,
And at the end of the day, it's a tragedy, I think, the book.
Yeah.
Because
well, the subtitle right in the front of the book says
the tragedy of
the tragic true story of the Burger City poltergeist.
It's like a spoiler up front.
yeah. I mean, that's the fun of doing a fake nonfiction book, is that I put a ton of spoilers right up front. I mean, the very first page of the book is in memory of those who died. And
I was going to touch that too, because
it lists the characters who are going to die. So you know right from the beginning that a lot of these characters aren't going to make it, and you know exactly which ones. And the question is how.
Yeah. And that's like a normal true crime thing. You know who the victims are already. It's just, how do we get to that point?
It's unlike a novel where I would never tell you who's going to die in the beginning.
Right.
Yeah.
This allows a different kind of, it's like the Hitchcock thing. Like if you show that there's a bomb under the table instead of just blowing it up, then it's the tension. Like, okay, you know these characters are going to die. When and how.
When's it going to happen? How's it going to? Yeah.
Exactly. So I think it sort of bugs you.
I think LJ talked about that on the last show, didn't he? About the bomb under the table.
The bomb under the table. Yeah,
that's was in
old
Tarantino's.
Yeah,
it was in Tarantino's movie too, Inglourious Bastards, I think.
Yeah. It's a classic example. Yeah.
Was that sort of freeing in a way to be able to like put all the spoiler stuff at the beginning and just sort of work your way to get up to it in a way?
Yeah. I mean, it's really freeing. It's really fun to be able to say, I'm telling you the end of the book on page 1.
Yeah.
And it's part of the fun of it is it upsets all expectations. Because why would he do that? Why would he be able to tell someone what is he going to be able to do with this book that's going to make up for the fact that he just spoiled the end? There's got to be something to this, right? So that allows you to really play with the form, and that's what as a writer, that's what this project was all about for me, is really to write new kinds of sentences and paragraphs and captions and footnotes and all these things that you typically don't get to write, and use them in a way that, nonfiction writing is so wonderfully dry. Like this, I'm not writing beautiful sentences full of flowery prose here. It's sort of reportage. It's dry, stated facts. And there's something that can be really creepy about that. And I think it's why people are drawn to these sort of true crime and paranormal investigation type of books. Is there's, I always bring up the example of the Amityville Horror, which is not a good book. It's not well written. But
I'm not the only one that I said that. I gave it like an average rating. So
it's not well written at all, but I think it's still creepy. It still creeps me out, even though it's a kind of a crappy written book, because there is a sort of eeriness to reportage.
There's like a detachment to like the emotional aspects of it. There's facts instead of.
So when I just lay out on page 1 in memory of these people who died from the Burger City poltergeist with no emotion, there's something. It's like seeing a list of the dead from some shooting or something. Like the lack of
almost empathy, a lack of empathy to it, sort of.
Well, just well, you could say it that way, but you also say it's a way of being respectful to the dead. You're not pumping it up. You're just saying, here's the list of the dead, and the fact that you're not emphasizing it in any special way sort of imparts a kind of gravity to it.
I'd like to see if this book ends up in libraries, what section they'll have it in, because I think Amityville Horror, some libraries have it in the nonfiction part. So I would be interested to see, what the library, if they just glance at it, or how it's presented to them, see where it ends up, kind of.
Yeah, it will be. I mean, librarians are pretty smart. I bet they'll put this in the right place, but it would be interesting if it ended up.
Well, I mean, you just might get a smart ass like me that might take it over to the nonfiction part, and just mess with people a little bit. So
next to the Golden State Killer and all those other books.
My hope is that if one were to do that, you would not really, until maybe the very end, know the difference. The story is small enough that it's possible that this really happened and you just didn't notice it. The news story just never hit your feed.
Like when I first got the paper and was reading, I had to Google. I was like, "Is this a real thing? Is he making all this up? Is Burger City a real place I've never heard of?"
And
so I did look it up.
The fact that it is all filled with real places and that a half or 2/3 of the footnotes are real articles and stories, it sort of makes you think
that lends to the authenticity of it. Like, oh, it could be real.
Maybe this did happen.
So break the news right here with us. Any thoughts? Any outlook of this becoming somewhat of a TV series or even a podcast or something like a serial podcast? Or let us know. Come on.
Yeah, there's a couple of things in the works out there that as you would expect, I can't talk about, but
right, we won't go too deep, but
yeah, I think its format presents an interesting adaptation puzzle in a good way. It does sort of feel like an American Vandal type,
especially the way you have it broken up. Like, that's March 2017, and then it's June 2017. So each episode could be about that specific, couple months or whatever. If they were to break it up into a TV show or something like that.
And it did, and it also would break up nicely into a podcast version, very much like a serial type of format with, relatively minimal changes, really.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I know probably not, but go ahead.
I was going to say that might be like a little cheaper way to go. Have a serial podcast of it, But
it would be cool to see.
Maybe that will blow up. And yes,
like when you were writing it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
One thing I can definitely say is that, and this is no huge revelation or anything, but Random House is putting out the audiobook, and even the audiobook should be kind of interesting. To see how they handle some of it, but how audiobooks, they know what they're doing. They know how to handle footnotes and stuff like that. But it'll still be interesting.
Yeah, it would be cool to have a cast of characters for the audiobook.
Yeah, that's what's like World War Z. There's two different versions of World War Z, and they just redid it a few years ago with a new cast of characters. But I could really see this as an audiobook, much like that, have different people playing different parts throughout. And
it'd be so easy because the interviews are so clearly labeled as interviews.
Right.
It would be relatively easy. I don't know how cheap it is, but to have voices that just, you put a filter on them that sounds like they're from a recorder, from when I recorded the interviews. So, it opens up a whole new interesting angle.
Was it, not to give too much away, but was it cool to put Easter eggs of your own stuff in there along the way a little bit?
Yeah, that wasn't a part of the plan really, but there's sort of a ringleader at the at Burger City in the book, a guy named Kit, who's a 19-year-old sort of jack of all trades who works there. Who's one of the guys who assumes he's going to be working there the rest of his life and hates it. And at the beginning of the book, it's made very clear that he is now in a sort of mental institute, having been accused of crimes relating to some of the deaths. And I go to visit him. And the book sort of intercuts between what happened in the past and me in the moment interviewing people involved in the tragedy. And so I'm in this institute talking to Kit. And one of the sort of startling things that happens is he reveals that he's a big fan of mine.
Yeah.
And that he's from this sort of institute library. He's got a stack of all my books there, and he starts asking me questions about my books. So that just struck me as something that could possibly happen. If you're sitting in what is sort of a jail, and someone's coming to talk to you, and they're a writer, you might go down to the library and start requesting their books and saying, "Oh, who is this guy?" And,
there was a small little section. I won't say what it was, but he was asking you like sort of trivia about your stuff. Like, is this true that this happened? And in your footnotes, it was yes or no or what it was. That was a pretty cool part.
I always enjoy like a little bit of meta in there.
Yeah, that was fun because there's it's one page where he asked me a kind of rapid fire questions about some big sort of
conspiracy sort of stuff, kind of about your own stuff.
And so I sort of answer some big questions about my books that people have always asked, but I slide them into a footnote in this book. I finally answer something.
If you want to know all answers, you have to buy this book to find out.
Yeah.
That was fun. That made me laugh in a good way. I was like, that's pretty clever and smart. I like that.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, hopefully we didn't give away too much of the book. People will still want to.
No, I don't think you did. There's a lot of surprises in store.
Yeah, there is.
Did you want to read just a tiny little bit, like the very beginning? Give them a little taste of what it is.
I could read a tiny bit. I've got a little bit of voice left.
You have to go to it. Just give them a little taste of kind of what's going on, because it's totally, like I said, like you said too. It's not like beautiful prose. It's just very sort of.
Do you want me to read from the very beginning?
If you want to, or the very end, whichever one you want.
Yeah.
Just like
he gives away all the way in the beginning, but if you want, if you want to do it that way, that'd be fine.
Okay.
I thought the author's note was cool because I was like, okay, this is gonna be a real author's note, and then it's the author's note that goes along with the book, which was interesting.
Right. It's not a real author's note. It's a in book sort of author's note. Okay, so I'll read the first page of the book, which is the author's note, which I've never read out loud, so I have no idea how this will go, but just one page, so how bad can it be?
Yeah.
All right, author's note. It sounds funny, doesn't it? Published in the spring 2019 Journal of Neuropsychiatry and Clinical Neurosciences, Disintegration, Ethos and Intolerance at Burger City is the central text of the still new field of Burger City poltergeist scholarship. And then there's a footnote, but I'll skip the footnotes. The author, Rachel Hindman, MD, PhD, posits that humor is the highest hurdle to clear for any probe into the Burger City disturbance. She and I agree that all previous attempts have failed, from the earliest mention of the ghost in the December 1st, 2016 Muscatine Journal newspaper to the Starz documentary Blood at Burger City, first broadcast on February 5th, 2019. And of course, all these things are fake. The failure is easy to understand. All of us are steeped in solemn, Gothic imagery popularized by famous hauntings. The Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, the Gettysburg Battlefield, the Winchester Mystery House, the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast, the Stanley Hotel. Burger City, on the other hand, was a fast food joint. Belief in the supernatural isn't required to appreciate what unfolded at Burger City franchise location number 8 near Johnny, Iowa, population 33, from October 2nd, 2016 to June 1st, 2017. It is the most exhaustively documented alleged haunting in history. The famous Enfield poltergeist, witnessed by over 30 people near London in 1977, and the Columbus, Ohio poltergeist of 1984, in which 14-year-old Tina Resch was photographed as a telephone flung itself across her lap, are tepid rumors in comparison. Yet people laugh at the Burger City poltergeist. You may recall the February 17th, 2019 Saturday Night Live sketch in which Kenan Thompson played a ghost trying to tell Burger City diners it was the greasy food that killed them. It's funny, right? That's the first page.
I like the little Columbus, Ohio part, by the way. I always get excited when, places I'm in are in books. Just a side note.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask, go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, it's been a different experience reading the book, and I don't know. I kind of had a different feel going into it. I don't know if Brad's the same way. I had a different feel going into it, but it was something totally different, something I didn't expect. It kind of made me, it challenged myself some because it was so informative, and I had to change my pacing and not miss anything. And then there were times when I had to go back. thought maybe did I miss it because there's so much information there. But then once I changed the pacing, it made it more like a podcast in my head or more like a TV show in my head. Like it really settled in a little bit better for me. So,
well, that's the thing about nonfiction writing is that they pack it full of facts,
right?
And when you're writing a novel, you wouldn't bother to throw in all these dates all the time and all these, it just would gum up the works. But in nonfiction, that's what you do. It's to show that to display veracity and display that you've done your work. You put in all these little details.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, at first it caught me off guard because I thought it was gonna be a prose novel, but it's like, no, this is more nonfiction documentary kind of thing. So I was like, okay. So once I knew what it was in for, I was like, I'm down for this. But I did want to ask, there's a part in the book where they're talking about the book called The Poltergeist. Is that a real book or did you make that up?
Yes, that is a real book. And as I say in my book, it is sort of the cornerstone of like serious poltergeist study. Doesn't mean I believe in any of it, but it is a real book.
I didn't know there was a difference between a ghost and a poltergeist. I just thought they were different words for the same thing. So was there something that you wanted to make it a poltergeist in the book instead of it being a ghost?
Yeah, well, I wanted to really play with the what you have in a fast food joint. Like you have the cardboard mascot, you have a freezer in which there's the so-called coldest cold spot. Which is a cold spot inside a cold spot.
I thought that was pretty funny too.
A phantom called the men's room bully. The drive-in phantom, which talks through the drive-through headset. So I wanted to use all these different things, which felt much more like a poltergeist to me.
Okay.
A ghost would be a ghost, as you sort of generally know it. Poltergeists are much more playful, or so goes the story. I mean, if you've seen the movie Poltergeist, like that thing does everything, and that tree comes to life, and that clown strangles someone. It's like once you say Poltergeist, the field just sort of opens up, and I was able to do a whole bunch of fun things, and each of them sort of had their own characteristics. So I could say at the beginning, and I do, that the Burger City Poltergeist was known for these 8 different phenomena, and I can lay them out. And through the book, you get to learn about these 8 different phenomena that sort of happened over. And that's the important thing, is that poltergeists tend to do things repeatedly. Every day at the same time, something will happen.
Well, Beefy's going to jump at 4:24 to 4:30 every day.
So that allowed me to create that sort of viral video sense of it, of people showing up to Burger City every day at 4:30, knowing that there was a chance that this phenomenon was going to happen again.
I guess I just never knew there was a difference between the two. I just thought they were interchangeable, but I learned something from your book.
There's just so many different names for a lot of stuff that I kind of grouped together. So
ghost, poltergeist, spirit, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, all that stuff mixed up. So
I learned a lot about the differences as well.
So we could probably talk to you another 5 or 6 hours about this, but it's been almost 2 hours now. We don't want to keep you on your Friday night, but this has been beyond awesome for us, and we can't thank you enough for stopping by. As we wrap it up here, where could not literally, but where can people find you? You have a website, Twitter?
I do have a website,
Instagram, all that stuff.
Just danielkraus.com. Okay. I have quit all my social media except Twitter. I'm down to Twitter now.
It's probably a wise decision.
The most, you're down to the most evil one.
Shaved off all the lesser evils. So that's it. That's all where you can find me. But my website's the main point of entry, and it has all my books on there.
Before we wrap up, Andreas has a question for you. With your obvious love of cinema, do you have a novel or shorter story that deals with, let's call it, lost films you'd like to recommend?
I'm looking at my books. No, I don't think so. This is the closest thing. I mean, this is a project that is talking about something that feels real and legitimate and isn't. So I would say no. But in lieu of me recommending one of my own, there's a great book by Ramsey Campbell called Grin of the Dark, I think it's called. It's either Grin of the Dark or Grin in the Dark, which is about a lost silent film that makes everyone who sees it go kind of crazy. It's really, really good. So go with that instead.
This does seem like something, like when it happened, like in 2017, like big news, and then everyone forgets about it. It sort of gets
Oh, yeah.
lost.
Totally. That's why this feels like legitimate, because it would be news for 3 days.
Yeah.
And then the new thing would happen.
Yeah. We'll have to have you back and talk about all of your other work, because I think we hit like 3 pieces tonight.
Just a few pieces.
we got really good into them. So this has been very enjoyable and fun. So again, thank you so much for stopping by. And everyone in the chat that stopped by with their questions, and everyone who's going to watch this later. It's going to be on Brad's channel for tonight. Tomorrow I'll put it on my channel at some point, and it will also turn into a podcast form for those who don't like to look at our faces. They can
Probably the best bet.
I would say so, yeah. But again, our guest this evening, Daniel Kraus, the book that he's going on tour. He's going on a 50-city tour. I don't know. You might see him out and about talking about it. This July 12th. I got to remember.
July 12th from Raw Dog Screaming Press.
Yes, and we can't thank Raw Dog enough for setting this up for us, Aaron.
They always put out quality stuff too. They always put out good stuff.
Yeah, we owe her a lot now for connecting us. So
checks in the
Daniel,
mail,
so much for stopping by. I totally appreciate it. That's going to do it, guys.
My pleasure.
As always.
Thanks
Thanks
guys.
for stopping by. Everyone stay safe.
All right.
See you. Bye.
Love you, Jay.